So basically, we created this product called the Power Grid, which is essentially a brand new way to not only track what this is. Oh, okay. It looks different on my computer. Okay, so what is the Power Grid? So basically what we've done is we've created an original formula. So different than IMDb that's kind of got their star meter, which is just based on page views, we've created an original algorithm with a statistician who actually works for the Yankees, despite my love for the Red Sox. I'm okay with that. And so basically what he's done is he's taken all the factors that go into comparing people. So most of you are writers, directors, producers, work in the industry. We all insider people. How do you compare everything that's out there? So basically, the Power Grid is tracking all of this. And the Pro version, which is what was formerly it's on the grid, if you are aware of these things, is the actual database that's cataloging all this information. So how do we measure power? That's everyone's curiosity, which is success over time. Well, what is success? What is time? That's the elusive question everyone's trying to figure out. Success, we're saying, is 60% commercial and 40% artistic. Commercial being box office, artistic being Metacritic, and Academy Awards, and time being relevancy and longevity. So what the hell does any of that mean, and why should you care? Well, basically, if you're an agent and you're looking to find new projects in development, everyone is kind of almost on the same playing field. So to be able to put some quantifiable data behind it allows people like, we have a lot of our subscribers are financiers. They come in, they use the database to track what's in development. So to be able to have an actual way to rank things using quantifiable data. So take a real life example is Jennifer Lawrence and Jessica Chastain. These are their scores. This is an article we did on the Wrap before the Oscars. So this is including their Oscar nomination right before the Oscars happen. This is Jennifer's score now. She's an 84.2, and that's partially because American Hustle, the film that's currently in production that David O. Russell is directing in Boston, is a 90 power score, which is only 20 points behind Silver Linings, which is insane for a product in development. And the fact that she won the Oscar, whereas Jessica Chastain has actually gone down a little bit. So they're both very powerful actresses in Hollywood. If you're a studio person, how do you able to quantify it? So we've kind of taken the algorithms from the studio, taken the algorithms from financiers, pulled it all together, and put it into something that as a consumer, as somebody in the industry, it's relevant to you. So this is kind of an example of tracking all this movement. This is a video of our biggest movers of the week.
Oh, God. Look at him now.
The Hangover Part 3 director talks smack about his box office competition. But who has power rank bragging rights? The next big film adaptation has added a new face to the cast and began production in Chicago, putting the project on the move on the grid. And the return of Disney Pixar's Monsters is also adding to its cast. But is it for the good or the bad? Find out now with the Wrap's Power Grid Biggest Movers of the Week. The Wrap's Power Grid is an exciting new way of ranking your favorite players, projects, and companies in Hollywood using a formula measuring box office performance, awards, critical opinion, and production activity. Whose power rank is falling and who is on the rise? They are our biggest movers of the week.
You ready to do this? Yeah. Wait, what are we doing?
This past week in Las Vegas, theater owners from across the country were treated to sneak peeks of the studio's upcoming big films, including Warner Brothers' The Hangover Part 3. The movie's director, Todd Phillips, who has a power rank of 187, brought up the fact that his billion-dollar franchise will be going head-to-head with another billion-dollar film club member, Fast and Furious 6, stating, "Come on, it's Vin Diesel and The Rock." To which a rep for Universal Pictures responded, "Bring it on, Todd Phillips." The Hangover Fast and Furious matchup put both movies on the move this week, pushing The Hangover Part 3 up to 239 and Fast and Furious 6 up to a power rank of 376. Also on the up this week is Disney Pixar's Monsters University. The prequel added a list of big names to its cast, including Helen Mirren, Alfred Molina, Dave Foley, and Sean Hayes, resulting in a 1001 power rank for the animated pick. And the highly anticipated big-screen adaptation of Divergent also added to its cast, just as the film began production in Chicago. Ashley Judd signed on to play Natalie Pryor, the mother of Shailene Woodley, in the film. The casting of Judd put this project on the move to a power rank of 986 this week. To see the power rank of all the stars, films, and the latest projects in Hollywood, it's on the grid at therap.com.
So basically everything I just described, free. All free. You can go in, you can look at it. This is just for you to be able to see all this scoring. This is just something new we've brought out for the consumer, and particularly for those of you that work Insider. Now, what's really interesting that's going to be the most relevant to you guys is our database, which is called PowerGrid Pro, which is basically a 360-degree view of the development landscape. So as somebody who worked at the agency, it is beyond frustrating to have every trade up, to have to be tracking on every tracking board, to have all of these grids and databases going on. It makes it very hard to do your job. So basically, we've done it for you. We've pulled every casting attachment, we've pulled every sale, we've pulled every spec, every open writing assignment, every open directing assignment. We're getting the agency grids, we're getting everything from every trade, pulling it together and putting it in a clean interface that's easy for you to use. So you take someone like Jennifer Lawrence, this is her detail page. We've got everything she's got in development, what the power score is for each of them, what stage of development it's in, what her most recent releases are, and then kind of the same way you would with IMDb or Studio System, the point is to make it a one-stop shop. We've got our agent, we've got our contact info, we've also got all the recent news that there are about her. Same thing goes for projects. So for instance, this is American Hustle. These are just screenshots of it. So these are the production notes that have kind of come in. You can see from 2011 when Ben Affleck was attached, and you can see when David O. Russell's attached. This is just a small fraction of it. So we're tracking everything throughout the years, every casting attachment, every person that's in, out, otherwise. What studio's in it, what production company, log line, etc. So most of you are probably on the grid. So a lot of what we're trying to do now is not just help make your job better, but to also get everything up to date so that we can really be able to get the best possible product we can. Another good feature we're offering, most people know about the Wrap, through our screening series. I also run our screening series. This past year, we did many films, just showing some of these silver linings. We did, to continue with the Jennifer Lawrence theme, we did a Q&A with David Russell. Piece was with Provenzine and Ben and other people. And Life of Pi was really interesting because we had an exclusive 10-minute behind the scenes of all the visual effects. So all of our PowerGrid Pro subscribers get priority access to these screenings, which I turned away 105 people from Silver Linings. We're the only screening series in town that's open to the public, too. Every other trade, variety, Hollywood Reporter, you have to be a guild member. Most of us would love to be guild members, or AMPES members, let me rephrase that. You have to be an AMPES member. Most of us are aspiring to do that, not quite there yet. If you are, I want to shake your hand. So it's impossible to kind of get the kind of access that there is. We're giving that to you. All we want to do is be able to help you. So what's the point, and basically why am I here? Well, we're in beta right now. So for all of you, we're going to give you free access. So that's very exciting. So I want you to write this down. That's how you need to get access to be able to register. It's powergrid.therap.com/signup. Everybody here gets free access by listening to my 10-minute little pitch. And all we're asking for you to do is give us feedback. That's a good idea, taking a screenshot of the screen. Or you can email powergrid@therap.com. If you have questions, I'll be in the lobby afterwards. Happy to answer them, kind of go over how it works. But I encourage you to sign up because normally this is $247 a year. So to be able to give free access, you're the only group, by the way, that's getting this. The only people that have access right now are our current paying subscribers. People watching online, this is open to you as well. Literally, all I'm asking is that you give us feedback, good, bad, otherwise. I want to know what's working, what's not, what do you want to see, what's helpful to you, what's going to make you do your job better, what's going to help you be able to track what's out there at the festivals. That's the point. That's really the whole reason why we built this, was because that product doesn't exist. I was there. I know why it's frustrating. I want to fix that process. And so that's really all we're trying to do and get to.
And I'm excited to introduce him to tell you about the panelists. So first of all, let's give a round of applause again to these guys. I mean, what incredibly visionary films, coming from a short film background, and as I'm sure all of you know, it's not easy to make it look that good and to be that much fun. It's really impressive. So first, Dan Blank. Dan did the Monster Roll short and is currently working on a Monster Roll feature. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's one
of many things. And you have a big background in visual effects, as that's what you're saying. So
sushi. I eat a lot of sushi for research. The same thing we receive.
And Fede Alvarez, I don't know if any of you saw The Evil Dead, but Fede just completed that. Now it's doing incredibly well. And people are throwing up and fainting after watching the movie, so
that's a good thing.
Exactly. And so Fede also did the Panic Attack short, which is incredible considering, how little you made that for. Then we have Spencer Susser. We saw 2 of his films tonight. I Love Sarah Jane and The Captain. Spencer also made a feature film called Hesher, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Natalie Portman. And then lastly, Dan Trachtenberg, Danny T. Dan Trachtenberg did the Portal No Escape, and is currently, working on several studio films, including Why, The Last Man. And we'll get into all of that. But so these are the panelists, and they all come from, as you can see, some short films that had a huge presence on the web, and from there broke out in their careers in different paths, but all successful in their own right. So let's get started, I guess, with some questions. First of all, this question's kind of for everyone, so we'll just go down the line and answer these. But going into these shorts, what was the end goal? Did you see that this was going to be strictly for the web? Did you want it to be shown on a big screen like tonight? What did you see happen with it, and were those goals achieved?
A quick kind of history for me is that I've been doing this kind of stuff for a while, and have been writing scripts and pitching and developing and all that kind of stuff. And writing a script on spec and trying to get somebody to read it if you don't have anything else ahead of you is really frustrating and tricky. And you're asking a lot of commitment from someone to spend 4 hours of their weekend reading something you wrote. So I found that the short film thing was going to serve my purpose much better, because it's a weird idea and you just got to see it to believe it kind of thing. So decided to make the short first and use that more as the kind of dialogue starter. For me, I guess because I come from Uruguay, where I cannot imagine a place that is further away from, more distant from Hollywood. So I always did the thing for the same reason, that I just love doing this shit. It's not there was no purpose, the goal, or I'm going to do this to try to get something. Because in the last 100 years of history of my country, nobody ever did a short and get a Hollywood deal. So that's completely unlikely. And so that's why I think most of the people who do things back there, you just do it because you enjoy every minute of the process of doing it. I really spent a lot of time doing Panic Attack. We spent $300 on the day we shot it, just because we fed some of the extras we had. The ones that weren't our friends. Our friends fed themselves. And exactly. And so that was probably just me and a friend of mine just spending a lot of hours in the computer, like putting shot by shot. So the whole point, I guess, was always I mean, the goal was just have fun doing it. And it was always, I don't even call it a short. I mean, the rest of the stuff you saw today, there are real shorts. I think Panic Attack is a YouTube video. That was what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a YouTube video. I was inspired by all those YouTube videos that people put together, and they put that blue screen on top of it, and the two texts cross each other, and they put some title, and I think, and that I was about to put that in the beginning, just Panic Attack. It was supposed to be footage that people put together online from a real attack that's supposed to happen, and then they put all the footage from different cameras, and they did a mashup online, and that was the idea. So it wasn't even a short; it was a YouTube video.
I'll go home and do a mashup with your film. I made so Sarah Jane. What was the question? The question was going into making Sarah Jane. You know, what was kind of the end goal with it? Did you know you were going to take it to the web, and go to festivals? What did you want out of it? So, well, when I made that, there was kind of two things. First off, I had an idea for a feature that I still want to make, that I haven't made yet. And I felt, for me, tone is so important in film. And I think it's one of the hardest things to write or to explain to somebody, but it's very easy to show. And so I felt like if I could show whoever I'm trying to ask money from what this film feels like, it'd be the best way to pitch it. So that was kind of the idea. I thought, oh, well, I'll just make a small version of this film, or I'll just show, you know, a little sort of glimpse of what this world looks like.
And it's amazing. So I was inspired by those shorts, and I really wanted to do something that would put me in a different category for directing commercials, and then B, if it had a side effect of being able to make movies, that would be awesome. So the intention was always for it to go online, although I had sort of it set in my mind to debut at a Comic-Con because there's a great reveal in the short of what it is, by revealing that the portal gun, that it's based on that video game. And I knew that online it would be spread by people saying, check out this portal thing. So I was really excited for it to, at least at one screening, have the idea of adapting something that, I'm a big fan of the video game, and it was wish fulfillment to sort of do what I always wanted to see that game do that I didn't think the game would ever do. But also, I think a lot of people, it's an easy way. It's easy to see the Uncharted movie or the Halo movie or the Call of Duty movie. Those are very cinematic properties, and Portal is a puzzle game, right? It's inherently uncinematic. So I was excited to find what could be the sort of cinematic, iconographic, silly word, imagery, and portray that. So really it was more of an experiment, and sort of, as Spencer said, just a way to make things. And yeah.
Well, so something Dan Trachtenberg and I were talking earlier, and I asked him, what his background in visual effects were, which he said very little to none. And all of your films here had a pretty heavy component of visual effects or special effects. Can you guys speak to that a little bit about your experience in it, and was this something that you had to be, advised on? Did you pull a lot of favors? From the looks of it, it makes the budget seem incredibly high, but I'm sure you guys were pretty creative here. So, Dan, you want to start?
Yeah, I do not have any background in visual effects other than a few commercials and working with effects companies. And that was the initial intention when doing Portal, was to work with one of the commercial production companies that I had previously worked with. And a few months down the road of that, after shooting it, we just realized they were very busy, and we weren't totally in sync on what the final effect should look like. So we parted ways, and I was sort of screwed. I didn't know what to do because I'm not what I believe Fede and Dan Blank are, and what David Fincher was, and I'm not a guy who knows visual effects, can just spend the time to work hours at home. And as much as I really, really wanted to be that guy, that was not me. So Luckily, aside from the directing, I also hosted a show online called The Totally Rad Show that's sort of a pop culture show reviewing movies and video games and comics and all that geeky stuff. And from that, I had a following on Twitter. So I took to Twitter and tweeted out all of my specific effects needs. And from that, assembled this international A-team of effects badasses all over Twitter. We literally had a couple mass movers in the Netherlands, particle specialists in New York City, CG modeler in the UK, and then compositors here in LA, all working virtually, having never met each other before. I haven't met almost all of them. The LA guys were now good friends. But we got it done. At 2 years, it took to coax and cajole them to spend their nights and weekends working on the flick. So
this is always the question that you in the audience want to know. The filmmakers feel kind of awkward asking, but can you talk a little bit about what was spent to achieve that? Because it looked like a lot.
It probably cost way less than I hope it looked like. It cost, I never really have said this, so I probably still won't as much as if I were you, would want to know. But I mean, it cost more than Fede's and less than Titanic. So
fair enough. That's very good.
Yeah. But all the cost was hard cost. So it was the camera, the gear, building some of the sets. And by the way, the visual effects weren't just the portal stuff. A lot of the guys put a lot of hard work into, like, the cell that she's in was only 2 walls. They had to create a 3rd and 4th wall. And the rooftop we only had 1 roof, so making that look like 2 and all that stuff. So there was a lot of effects, soft effects, that I wish I had done practically, but didn't. So anyway.
Fair enough. So Spencer, what about you with Sarah Jane, and actually with the captain especially? Fede had mentioned maybe you shot on the Universal lot for the captain, or was that maybe? But again, I mean, mass carnage, a lot of incredible production design. From what I could take, most of it was done in camera and on set. You talked a little bit about that process and what your experience in that was.
Yeah. Well, my background is editing. That's where I started, not really on purpose. Basically, when I started making films when I was younger, no one wanted to put them together, so I had to learn everything myself. And then I started doing that for a lot of other directors, which was really like my film school. And along the way, I ended up doing a lot of visual effects stuff, and just kind of learned it, and I'm a huge fan of visual effects. But I really like the invisible effects when you don't know that there's something going on. So for me, I always start, trying to figure out a way to do it in camera, and then I always like, enhancing effects. But so in Sarah Jane, there's quite a few effects that hopefully don't stand out. There's also a couple that stand out, but yeah, the amazing thing about some of the visual effects now is you can kind of do anything. There's one shot that I was never happy with, and every time I see it, I cringe. But there's an explosion. Basically, when we shot an explosion, and it looked great, and because it was the zombie exploding, I also shot elements of the zombie, like body parts and blood and dirt. And so in order to do that, I shot it at 48 frames to get more frames, so we get more information. And we were using the Viper camera, which was one of the first kind of digital cameras. I guess basically before the Red came out. And no one really knew how to work it. So they changed the frame rate. And all we got was a purple screen. So all of our elements, all this beautiful explosion was just purple. Like, not a purple picture, just purple. And no one had the heart to tell me when we were shooting, because they just knew I was devastated. So it was the day after we wrapped, and said, by the way. So that was pretty hard. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to go out and actually shoot an explosion element, because I still wanted it to feel real. So me and the effects guy, I went to his shop. This is in Australia. And not far from his shop was like a soccer field. We decided we're going to go out there with the camera and set up an explosion, make sure it's safe, and we go out there and I'm looking at the camera and a tripod, and he's got like some crazy looking stuff. And there was an old lady walking a dog. We were waiting. She was looking at us like, what are these guys up to? And then she leaves, and we let off this massive explosion. I mean, it was like stupid. It was like the size of a building. And then, we made sure it was good and we got out of there. But it was like unusable. So that was the second attempt. And then a friend of mine ended up doing that shot. And I mean, they pretty much made it from scratch. So I was so blown away by it. They actually kind of saved the film in terms of storytelling. To me, it still stands out as an effect, but anyway. So, and then there's a lot of, I'm really rambling.
No, not at all.
Some other very simple effects, like when the kids shoot the zombie with the arrow. Really, there's no real effect. It's like an old camera trick where, we're on the kid yelling at the zombie, the other kid yells. We whip hand over to the kid who's yelling, and we cut. And then we set up the kid with the bow and arrow and the target. Do the same shot with the whip hand. He shoots the arrow, we follow it back, and then, hits the target. And we set up the zombie with an arrow in him and a little squib out the back. And then you pan again, and when we land on him, the squib goes off and he reacts. And then they're just clean cuts, like just cuts in the whip hands. And we thought, we talked about painting the arrow and making it look, but you just don't need to. You can frame through it and it's seamless. Such a simple effect. And also even just like when the kid shoots the arrow that's on fire, it's an old, I think they used to do it in Westerns, where if you wanted to shoot an arrow, if you wanted to hit where you were going, you'd have a hollow arrow, and then they use piano wire, and they attach it to what you wanted to hit, and then you actually fire it and it goes exactly where you wanted to go. So, just stuff like that. And in the neighborhood in the beginning, I wanted to just tear this neighborhood apart, spray paint every house, but we can't do that.
I mean, you guys actually turned all those cars over.
We turned one car over. It just goes a long way. A bit of smoke, a bit of trash.
Right.
What did you do the guy and split it?
That was just a dummy. And then we just went and someone got some stuff from the supermarket and did a blood, some hamburger meat.
Impressive.
And yeah, so. And then just, I'll let you know stuff.
We'll come back. Clearly, there's a lot of creativity in getting that production design and pulling off those tricks. And so Fede, I think he said a pretty jaw-dropping number of $300 to pay the crew or to pay the extras and food. But what's your experience, leading up to this? Because clearly there was a deep understanding of visual effects components.
I don't know, really, I did a lot of stop motion when I was a kid. Just had a chance to have a camera because my dad was in media. He did some documentaries, so I had a chance to have a VHS camera. So I did some stop motion. Then from there, I did with a collection of Star Wars doll that action figures. I did bigger stories. Always just stop motion, voiceovers. But I was just always I just loved it so much that I had to learn how to do it, but nobody will teach me. There was no way. I was too young too. I wasn't going to film school, nothing like that. So I had to really learn a lot of techniques and stuff just by instinct. And with a friend of mine, he will have a VHS. We'll come home, put the two VHS together. So once we finish the stop motion, we'll record voice on top of it with just headphones. That you realize at some point that if you talk in the headphones work as a mic too. At some point. And so we're recording them with that and managed to push play on one of the VHS and copy the short to the other VHS and put an RCA cable with the audio, so we managed to loop out audio. And so I was a big fan of discovering all those things, and so I guess I was doing that when I was 7 or 8 years old. So by the time I did this when I'm 28, something like that. So I learned so much about the craft of just doing these things, right? And when I had a computer for the first time, I started learning 3D as soon as I could, and learning softwares and stuff like that. I just loved the craft of filmmaking in general, every aspect of it. I'm a big fan of it. I love to learn it. Been an editor tutor, well, never really good at any of those things precisely. There was better animators than me. There's always better artists in every level around me when I grew up. But I think I know how to do a little bit of each one of those parts. And so Panic Attack was an example of that, I guess. Because there was no way to do it. It was just too expensive and crazy. But I'm like, I have time. I can, I'll do one shot at a time and try to get there. And I don't know, probably it was 100 shots. I don't remember. Probably it was around that. 100 VFX shots, right? But 80% of the short is just the camera looking up to the building. So it's just me and a friend of mine, just my DP, just shooting through driving the car through the city and just shooting buildings. And then the thing that really gave the effect of, gave production value, I think, was to shots, was the extras. But we had actually just 30 extras in the bus. And but in Uruguay, it's pretty relaxed when you shoot. So we had a permit, we asked for it, they gave it for us. They gave it to us free. We got to go to a square. We just spread our 30 guys around the square. And there's no film crew, right? It's just me with my friend with this very small DV camera, the Z1. Remember that Sony camera that was the first digital take? So it could, mini DV, but digital. It was like a big format. And so because there's no crew, we just mixed them. And suddenly with the megaphone, we go, we do the noise, and everybody, our guys just got slowly running away, looking up. And the rest of the people in the square, they just see that and they start doing the same. So suddenly we had like 50 people acting for free for us, right? And in Uruguay, the cop is with us, and the cop is laughing his ass off. He doesn't care. In LA, you would get arrested right away, probably. But so we had all those shots of, they look quite impressive. They're quite impressive in the production value, right? It's like there's more people running. And we cloned some people's also in some shots. We cloned them. And then it was, after we shot it, I shot it in 2006. So I put a trailer online, YouTube of the short, which was actually the first scene. It never ever happened with that. Nobody saw it. And so I started just from that point, I just started working shot by shot. I had a hard time trying to figure out how to do the explosions and simulation of fluid and stuff like that. It was just very tricky to find a way to do it. And I think in 2008, new software, new plugins were coming out that you can buy for $50, like cheaper stuff. Then I find this place online called Detonation Films. If you don't know about it, you have to check it out. It's amazing. Just some dudes, they just pull up stuff and they shoot it just like you did. And they shoot against green screen, blue screen, and it sells you, for $1, $2 the explosion. So I bought a lot of smokes and explosion from them. I use it all over the short for most of the fires and stuff you see. That's kind of how we did it. There's just one shot at a time. Took a lot of time. Really, almost a year probably when I really started, really working on it. The beginning of 2009 is when I said, I gotta finish this. My short was a joke short, the one that your friends go like, hey, what happened with that big project you had? Yeah, that one you told me about. You were talking about the giant robots. The one you shot 3 years ago, you never finished. What happened with that? You're like, yeah, I'm finishing it. Someday I'll finish it. Yeah, it's there. Buck burner. And then it was finally done.
Yeah, you can tell them you can see people. So Dan, you have a ton of experience as an animator. Is that how you started?
Yeah. So I went to NYU for film school, and I focused on stop motion animation actually. So I found, at that level when I was in film school, I had all these crazy stories which I wanted to tell that were hard to do in Washington Square Park. So I got into animation that way, and what I loved about it at the time was that it opened up the world of storytelling. Do anything you want. Over time, visual effects has kind of caught up in that way, and now those kinds of stories that you need in animation to tell, you can now do all that some of the effects, and you don't have to worry about family audience or an entire massive team of animators to get something very simple done. so that was sort of, my sort of progress was I moved into visual effects, and my first job was on Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, which, at the time was like a very important, it plays a very significant role in VFX history, because it was a true, garage band, of VFX. And in terms of a process, what was great for me, and it sort of has been had such an impact on me, was that there was no real hierarchy in terms of how stuff got done. If you had a way to do it, or you thought of a good way to get a shot done by going out into the parking lot and shooting some stock footage or whatever, great. And it sort of set me up in a way of using that as kind of a philosophy that I wanted to make movies. And over time I got better, and I learned a lot, from just sort of doing it a lot in these kind of fields. And when the Canon 7D came out, suddenly it was like, okay, everything I needed to go and do this myself, I can finally do, right? So I shot stuff, and I started off very, very, very small, just going out in my backyard and shooting some tests and trying to do some tracking and pumping stuff in, and moved on to making some, little videos I put on Vimeo, and suddenly I got some, people calling me and asking me to make music videos for this stuff, and just kind of started working it up, and felt like I got to a point in terms of, the production side of things, and, going out and shooting these things live action, felt like I was ready to, start taking on something bigger. And that's where, I made friends with the producer I really love, and it's been a great help, Matt Miller. The thing we wanted to do with Monster Roll, which was important because the previous video I'd done, which got the most attention up till that point, I made for like $2,000, and I was trying to be so proud of it, just bragging that I'd done this thing for $2,000. And there was, it got me certain attention, and it definitely, I put in a ton of sweat equity to do it, and that was always like this sort of unsaid, fact was that I probably, wasted, 6 months, just making this thing for free in my house. And so, because I wanted to treat Monster Roll as this very serious project that, we would then go to producers and studios and stuff and really say, look, we can do this, and this isn't just, some amateur thing, but this is more legit. We tried to, really budget it out and see how long it would take to do, and how many artists we need, and design a real pipeline so we got more comfortable with actually working on it. If this was just going to be a short film and we wanted to make it into a feature film, it couldn't just be me in my basement. So there'd have to be a little more plan in place and some experience in terms of what would really be needed. Well, of course, we did find out that, even though I do know VFX, and even though, I kind of know what's hard and what's not, I was, definitely biting off more than I could chew. So it did definitely take a little longer than it's supposed to.
I think that's kind of the nature of filmmaking, is you kind of go into something and you're going to be presented with a million new challenges you never thought of, and next time you'll know those and then go to the next one. Okay, great. But to now transition here a little bit, so I'm sure what a lot of you want to know is, how do you turn this into getting some attention and getting a feature film that does really well? And so let's start with Fede, because it's interesting being from Uruguay and being the only person to ever, make a film and get what you've gotten. Talk to a little bit about what that experience was like and how quickly it moved after that.
Yeah, I always have a hard time telling the story. Particularly in film school, I went to AFI a couple of weeks ago. We showed the movie and talked about it. It's a little bit embarrassing, but I did the short. I finished it. I just wanted to put it out there. I never thought about going to festivals because, like I said, I thought it wasn't a YouTube short, so it should be on YouTube. And so we put it online, and I think that was a Thursday afternoon, and just Friday morning I woke up and I had like 100. It was just all the agencies saying they want to meet you, and all the studios and production companies, managers, lawyers too. Like it spread so fast, and everybody was passing along. And I think because of the time difference, I didn't really check emails one day, and that day in the afternoon. So like the next day, it was a lot of time for Hollywood. When they want to get to something, they get very anxious, very aggressive too. So, and I got an email from William Morris, and I think that's a dude, right? I have no idea who they are. And, so I didn't know anything about the agency system. I know about Hollywood, and I'm a big Hollywood fan, and movies and directors and writers, but not about the system. That's something that you know if you're here and you know more about it. So, anyways, next day, I'm like, whoa, I'm trying to overwhelm with all that. At the beginning, I thought it was some kind of sick joke that my friends were pulling on me, like because I got a phone call from Warner Brothers, and the first half of the call I was convinced with a friend of mine. I always do that. And so I was like in the kitchen, like this on the phone, and yeah, oh, you're from Warner Brothers. That's great. He was like, well, we do 5 movies a year, and it was just 5 movies a year. You guys would do like 100 movies a year. Like, come on, you Warner Brothers. He was like, well, we could. The guy was like so embarrassed. And then at some point I realized it was a real call from Warner Brothers. It was just so embarrassing. And I'm a good friend with the guy now. But it was really a weird, 2-day thing, and then I think the CA flew me over. Well, they don't do that, but they did. I didn't sign with them back then I came here, met all the people, I ended up signing with them. But the best part, I think, the coolest part for me is I came here like 7 days after I actually literally uploaded the short, and I was going to have a meeting, like it was 2 weeks of meetings, like 4 meetings a day, right? That I had planned, scheduled ahead of me. But I got here on a Sunday, and there was one of the guys that wrote to me was Roy Lee, who's a producer here, and Roy is awesome. He's a really nice guy. And so I decided to have coffee with him on Monday morning before I started to go into any of the meetings, because honestly I didn't have any idea what was facing, right? And I was quite fearless too. I didn't really care the fact that I thought like, fuck it, worst case scenario, go back home. I was having a good time. Like, it was not that I was suffering, trying to get out of that shithole. I was like having a good time. So I was, whatever. Like I had nothing to lose. That's what I'm saying, I guess. And so I had that coffee that morning, and I was supposed to have I was going to have all the agency meetings on that afternoon. Usually you have to choose. You have to choose your agent today. So I was going to have all the agency meetings on Monday morning, on Monday afternoon. But on the morning, I had coffee with Roy, finished having coffee, we talked about movies in general. And then he said, I asked him, well, after the coffee, I was like, where are you going? He said, like, I'm going to watch a screening. What's that? It's kind of a free movie? And he goes like, yeah. It's like, can I go? And I've been to a screening. He goes like, yeah, of course. And we went to where Lionsgate is down in Santa Monica. And went there, and we went to see a screening of Kick-Ass. It was a rough cut of the movie. And then in the lobby, I met Nathan Kane, which is producer at Universe and producer at people there. And he's Sam Raimi, his partner. So he goes like, oh, you're the guy who did that short. Sam Raimi loved it. And I was like, awesome. But I got an email from DreamWorks saying Spielberg loved your short, so I wasn't impressed by that. I was like, sure. But I'm a big fan of Sam, but I'm a big fan of Spielberg too. So we talk a little bit about movies, we watch the movie, we come out, I give you my notes. I don't know why. Like, it was a rough cut, so they always invite you to give you notes to rough cuts. So, and that was that, and I talk a lot about a bit about the stuff I want to do and the movies I want to do. And I go to the bathroom, and I think right there, Roy Lee started working his magic, talking with him, like, oh, man, the guy, I think the guy is rich. I'm not, but he didn't think that I was. And they start talking about, and Nathan wanted to cut a deal with me, and And meanwhile, I'm in the bath. While they're discussing like $1 million deals, I'm in the bathroom, like shocked of how soft the toilet paper is in a public bathroom in Beverly Hills. Like, well, Santa Monica. I'm like, oh shit, I mean, soft as my sheets at home. So I was like so impressed with that. And at the same time, they were cutting the deal, and I went back to the lobby. So that's it. Let's go. Bye bye. See you later. And that afternoon, Roy called me and said, like, I think they want to offer you a deal. And that afternoon, I had all the agency meetings. They had no idea about anything that was going on. And the next morning, I go with CAA, and on Tuesday morning, I went there as my first day as a client to discuss what we're going to do, to really discuss what they were going to do for me. But they'd say, like, what the fuck did you do yesterday? There's a deal here for you. And I was like, I just went to a screening and met these people. And it's really had to happen. And it's really the way I think it happened for most people, and the fact that deals had not made out of general meetings usually. They happen, like you meet somebody and you like them and you don't make moves together. It's more based on that than the agency system. So that's how it happened. So after 10 days, I was going back home, telling everybody like, yeah, I'm in the cover of Variety. They don't know how deal to make a movie. So it was really bizarre.
I think it would be fair now to kind of hear an experience that's not completely superhuman and never happens ever. So I'd actually like to ask a follow-up question, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
How did you hone in on Evil Dead from that?
Yeah, because the real part of that story, I mean, the more realistic and grounded part of the story is that movie never happened. I mean, that deal that we signed that day, that movie never happened, and I was so excited back then. I was so excited about that. Okay, great, we're gonna make a movie. But I was so naive at the same time, because the reality was that that didn't mean that I was going to make a movie. That just meant that we got a deal to make a movie.
What year is this, by the way?
This is the beginning of 2010. So that's when I went through the process. I don't want to extend myself too much on this, but we just went through the classic process of development, where we had to hire the American writer, because I didn't even propose the idea of writing a script myself. And I have a master in screenwriting. I studied film and then did a year master's in Amsterdam. Master's year in Amsterdam, master in screenwriting. So, but anyways, I wrote out a script, but I never even proposed myself, because I felt like, this is Hollywood. Everybody's a fucking great writer. It's not. I mean, particularly in the Hollywood business, like, you get find out. I don't get this. But anyways, like, we said, like, because the money, when I think money, it's just like, it shocked me. But this kind of thing, is that, okay, let's hire an American writer, let's pay them $500,000, insane numbers, right? And so I thought, like, if you spend that kind of money on a writer, you're going to get an amazing draft. And I know that after writing that, it's very hard, even for a great writer, it's very hard to do a great draft. So, and this is a writer, who's a good friend of mine, but he didn't deliver, and while he was writing, and I was too honest with the process too, so when I got the first draft, I called the producer and I was like, this sucks, man. Which, you don't have to do that. You don't do that.
Don't ever do that.
Never ever do that. You call them and go like, well, this is a good starting point, blah, blah, blah. You kind of try to keep everybody excited. If you tell them what I told them, you just kill the project right away. It's just like, kill everybody's excitement. But I was being honest. I guess I don't think you have to lie anyways. I think maybe that's still a good way to go, just being honest. If it sucks, it sucks. And by that point, Sam offered me Evil Dead. He said to somebody, so I told me, I think Sam wants you to do Evil Dead for him. And we started talking one day, and he asked me, would you do Evil Dead for me? And I was like, well, of course, but let me write it this time. Can I do a shot at the script? And he said, like, sure, that's what I want. And I want to write a director.
You were working on another movie?
We're developing that.
Developing something else, and then you mentioned, hey, you got to Evil Dead.
Gotcha. And I was in a holding deal with them. I signed a holding deal when I signed that deal. Beginning of 2010, so I had really no choice to go anywhere. And I loved the idea of doing a new Evil Dead. I thought I'm a big fan of the original film, so I thought, well, let's make one. But and he gave me that chance, and that's how it kind of started. We did step deal to treatment and to draft, and we loved getting on the draft, and we don't create writers.
And some questions are coming in. I mean, real quick, just were you intimidated by the fan following of Evil Dead and kind of the legend of it, or did that inspire you, excite you?
No, not really. I mean, I was excited. It's kind of, when you make it something like this, it's a full empty, glass full empty, half empty, half full kind of thing. Because at the same time, you do an Evil Dead movie. So whatever you do, there's a lot of people that just get excited about it just because it's Evil Dead. When we screen it for the first time, we screen like the first scene, and when the title comes in, everybody starts cheering. If that title wasn't Evil Dead, probably nobody would have cheered. So it's something that can play against you, but also in your favor when you do it. If you do a decent job, the title will push you and will take it to another level. I mean, I think the movie is good, but I think people that like the movie, they go crazy about it. They say, "That's fucking, horror movie I ever saw in my life," and it's not. But because it's Evil Dead, it gets you excited. So I was trying to be excited about the good part and never really worry about what the fans are going to say. I mean, I come from a place where all my friends were, they are film gigs, but people that will worry you, like they're troubled people. But and we watch too many movies all our life, and we know the Evil Dead, and we know Sam Raimi. So it's very hard that somebody else is going to come to us and point us, you did something wrong because Evil Dead. We're going to go like, no, fuck you. We saw that movie 100 times. Don't tell me, what Evil Dead's supposed to be. So with such a film gigs that we weren't scared of, other film gigs, particularly this universe. If I was doing some Marvel comic book, I would be scared because there's a lot of people that know so much about that medium that never read about the comic book. So this particular word, I was intimidated at that point. I was just more excited about what I was making.
So, okay, first of all, that was tweeted in from Bob Schultz, that question. So this question is from Beverly Brooks, and it's to anyone but Dan Blank. Really curious because this is something that you've done here, but shooting and posting 3 to 5 minute trailers to get the script sold, is this a good idea or giving away the store, she says. So what do you think here, because this is something that you've now done?
And we definitely, we had that little panic and fear ahead of time, and there's always this weird kind of, internal philosophy that like everybody's out to steal your idea, and you got to be so careful, and it's all bullshit. If you have a good idea and people see it, then, the internet has been interesting because at least in my time out of film school until now, it's definitely changed in terms of people being afraid to post something and being like way too public posting stuff. So I do think that you're gonna have a hard time getting people to read your scripts, and if you don't have anything going, or if you don't have those connections, the best thing you could do is find a way to get it out there. There are blogs that turn into TV shows. There are tweets that turn into TV shows. So for you to make like an actual short film or something that conveys your idea and shows your talent, then that's it's the ultimate calling card. And I think that we've all definitely benefited from the internet and the sort of very random kind of nature of who will discover this stuff. And you might think you have some connections or some way to get it to people, but the internet can do it better than you can possibly imagine. The only thing I'll add to that, though, is that it is a total crapshoot whether or not the thing's going to go viral. So you can't. It's like banking that you're going to be discovered, by walking on the boulevard. Like there's other things you have to prepare for and plan as backups in case this this viral sensation thing doesn't totally work out. And it's okay if it doesn't, because if you meet somebody and then you email them the link to your short, that also works out really well.
Can I add something to that? Sorry, I'm talking too much. I think that's completely, it makes complete sense, but I guess there's also a part that we should never forget that Hollywood works a lot about excitement and mystery, and every time you sell in a pitch or something, you're inviting people to get into some adventure, and so I guess in some projects maybe there's, like you were saying, when you want to sell tone, it's very important. It also depends where you are in the game and how much they trust you, or if they have no idea who you are, they have no concept no context whatsoever, that's the best way. You put the short, hopefully it's going to get to somebody. But sometimes there's some projects that they're so much better when you're talking about it. And Hollywood love somebody that looked them in the eyes and go like, I'm going to make this movie awesome. Don't ask me what it is. It's just going to be fucking awesome. Believe me. Trust
How
me.
much? Let's do it.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's just, and it's sometimes if you suddenly you show it, they go, that's the idea you were talking about. Yeah. So sometimes it's better if you find a way to sell your idea by being mysterious, but giving them confidence that what you're doing is cool and it's going to be great. Because that's how they sell shit every day in this town. Like just making you believe that it's going to be awesome. And sometimes you want to tell them more about it, you go like, I bought it already. So you're going to say an extra word, maybe you go, that's not what I want. So it's always have to be careful how much you really show them. Because sometimes the idea is always going to be better in their imagination. The movie's going to be better in their imagination if you find a way to describe it in a simple way. But again, that's depending where you are. If you have context, if you know anybody to talk to, if you don't, the best way is always going to be
right. And now Dan and I think Dan's trajectory a little bit kind of mirrors Fede's in that you made this, put it up, and people came calling. They saw it. I remember going online and someone having posted it up on their Facebook page or something like that, seeing it and going, this is really good. And you hear about, announcement that big studio movies are attaching you. I'm going to have you speak to that in a second, but Spencer, I think, what was your path like a little bit? Because after you did I Love Sarah Jane, at least from what I gather is that you had the script Hesher, and you got that into Natalie Portman, who was a big fan of your shorts. Sort of. Okay. Well, I was, I feel like it's taken me a long time to make a film. I decided I wanted to make film when I was 16. Like, I'm going to make it as a film next year. I failed every year for a very long time. And I started making commercials and music videos and really started to kind of practice and learn, but I kept wanting to make films, but I didn't know how to make film. So, and I guess somehow I thought the script would just show up at the door and then I would just make it and it would be easy. And that just never happened. And so I started to write. And so I was kind of well into writing Hesher when I made Sarah Jane. The other thing is I think because, and I'm sure this goes for all you guys, it's like the tangible act of actually making something, it feels like you're a filmmaker. When you're writing, it doesn't. In a lot of ways, and it gets really frustrating. And so I write, and then I get bored. I'm like, I have to make something, and I'm like thinking. And but anyway, when I was writing Hesher, I sort of said to myself, this is how I want to make it. I want to get certain actors I want to do. Like Natalie was someone who I was writing for, and I was very lucky to have her sign on. But if she wasn't going to do it, I had 4 other ways that I would do it. Like if I had to make it on a 70, I would have. Although I don't think they had a 70 on it. But yeah, so I don't know. And certainly getting Natalie on board changed everything. Like just everyone went, oh, what's this? And
I'm sure that I am curious. I'm sure they are. How did that happen, Natalie?
So I worked on a film with Natalie in 2000, and so we became friends. And like when you're on a film, everyone is together, and then 10 years go by, whatever, and everyone gets away. So we were close on the film, but I hadn't talked to her for years, and so I just sent it to her agent, her manager, and you can't just send a script to a movie star. It sort of has to go through a million layers of people before they actually get it, before they even know it's been sent to them. And fortunately, I didn't know any of these people. They read it and went, this is kind of cool, and they passed it on, and they passed it on, and passed it on. And then finally, when she was going to read it, I wrote her a letter and told her why I wanted to do it. And she was telling me later she hates getting scripts from people she knows, her friends, because she has to be honest with them. So I think she doesn't want to get it first. But she read it and she called me the next day and said she wanted to do it. And so I was like, really? Oh, okay. And yeah, and then everyone all of a sudden takes me very seriously before that. But, you know, and I think that the thing that was good about having Sarah Jane was people look at your commercial work or music videos, no matter what it is, and they go, yeah, but that's a commercial. You make a movie. It's like, well, it's storytelling. I mean, but they don't really think like that. Okay, you made a horror film, you make a drama. Well, yeah, of course, but you haven't done it. So sometimes that's kind of the sad. Anyway, when people have read the script, they can look at Sarah Jane and go, okay, this guy's not going to make it look like a complete idiot. And I think for an actor, that's basically what they want to know.
Yeah. I mean, and Dan, you know, seems like you had you're a commercials director, and you said, I got to show that I can do something mainstream and something big, which is where I want to be directing. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, so in the 2 years of doing all of the visual effects on Portal, I actually did another short film called More Than You Can Chew. It was on YouTube for Black Box TV, and that when that came out, that actually got attention from managers and agents and stuff like that. So I signed with a management company, an agency, and all that stuff based on that short. And I started going out in general meetings and working on some ideas that I had, linking up with writers because I'm not a writer myself. And then Portal came out, I think about a year later. And based off of the relationships that I had already sort of been building up over the past year, when that came out, that really catapulted things. And it just so happened that I was going to go out and pitch something that I'd been working on this whole time, sort of right when Portal broke out. And then when we went and pitched that thing, because of the juice from Portal and having a solid pitch, it sold. So that was the first thing that I'd done, which is a movie at Universal with Chris Morgan, who did the Fast and Furious movies, and that's called Crime of the Century. And then from there, reading scripts, trying to find open directing assignments, things like that, and just recently signed on Man, which was I'm a huge fan of that comic book, and it was based on the first meeting I had. I brought up being a fan of that comic. I knew that it was on their IMDb page. I knew that they had that movie, and knew that there were multiple directors attached over many years, and still hadn't seen the movie, so I was wondering about it. And interesting enough, on a pitch on another movie, I ended up getting, but was very impressed with my take on that material. So they thought of me for why, and that was just winning an open directing assignment. And so that's been, we're now a couple months into developing that. So that's fantastic. It's amazing.
Can I ask Dan a question?
Yes.
So, if you guys don't know about open, these scripts or whatever the producers have, and they're currently, talking to agents every for, send me your directors and have your directors all do these dog and pony shows to try to win the job. So, what did you? I mean, obviously they liked you and everything, but you still, I'm sure, had to give some sort of very big presentation for that project.
Multiple times, yeah. So even for the original stuff that I've pitched, it's generally like a rip-o-matic. We used to do that in commercials too, but a teaser trailer for the movie based on images from other movies. And people did them online for fun. There was that awesome Green Lantern one with Nathan Fillion back in the day. That was actually my template for it. And there was a Thundercats one. Have you guys ever saw the Thundercats trailer? It's awesome. Actually, it's probably not awesome, but in my memory, it's really cool. So doing a rip-o-matic, putting together a book that is kind of like a treatment in commercials, but for the movie, it's images that tell the story the way you see it, the style, the tone, the look for your take, and casting ideas and all that kind of stuff. So, and for why the Last Man, the main character is an escape artist, so I performed a zip tie escape in the room that was not met with applause and was probably a mistake. I did not learn from Catwoman. Who's the actress?
Yeah, that's the Sean Young.
Sean Young. Yeah. I didn't learn from that. So it's generally pitch book and being able to, articulate your idea and see the trailer stuff.
Cool. So I'm going to take another Twitter question, and we're going to open it up to the audience for questions. But this one's to Dan from Chess Dog.
Chess Dog, what's up?
Does he see video games? Do you see video games as being adaptable to film? Does a story exist that should be adapted? One that you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything is adaptable. Everything is adaptable. And I think there's always an exciting take for something that just hasn't been found. I think video games, the funky thing about video games is so many of them are based on cinematic ideas. Every video game, most modern video games are based on aliens. James Cameron's take on Alien. So a lot of it seems a little redundant sometimes to adapt certain properties, and but then Neil Blomkamp, I think, had a pretty unique take for Halo. It didn't end up happening, but that was a way of adapting a property that was already derivative and making it feel fresh. So if he had done it, I'm being presumptuous, but I think after seeing District 9, at least we can get a sense from what he would have done with Halo. So I think there's a way into anything, and for me, that's the exciting thing is figuring that out. A lot of properties don't have the most compelling stories, video games. So to me, that's just like having a raw idea that you may have come up with some imagery. It's about honing that and figuring out what the best story is for that. And there's some games that have wonderful stories, and it's about doing justice to them. So, and there's Batman. Oh, like Pac-Man. Yes. Well, there was. Someone actually did the short Pac-Man thing. Well, yeah, dude, there's probably a take on Pac-Man that could be compelling. Maybe not. Maybe not Pac-Man, but
Contra. Definitely Contra.
What's that? There you go. Yeah. So, and is there something I would like to do? Yes, there are many things I would like to do. But I don't. There's lots of cool properties that have a lot of potential, I think.
Cool. And last Twitter question, actually. EJ wants to know, specifically to Dan, what were the risks and dangers of outsourcing the VFX? And then to everyone, where do you find the talent to do visual effects if you're not, a big Twitter guy?
The dangers of outsourcing. I didn't really think of the dangers. I was very desperate, and luckily found extremely talented people. I mean, the danger was. It took a long time. I couldn't. I will say, the final stretch of it with the LA guys, I was able to be in the room, and it was night and day to be there and to shape things with them, as opposed to giving notes. Those notes can be misinterpreted. They're mostly communicating via email because the Netherlands is the time difference and cost of whatever. Anyway, so being in the room made things sing, and I think that was a danger of working virtually. But there were a lot of positives, and I've even heard. I know Timur Bekmambetov has he did Director Wanted and the Abraham Lincoln vampire movie, but he's got some crazy system where he outsources all the VFX for his movies and has you can eBay bid on shots to do for his. So it's incredible. And I think it anything casting, even if you were to do it locally with friends, you want to cast the right people for your crew. So for the VFX, so you run the risk that you would doing anything in terms of casting it wrong. But hopefully, you're a good director by making good choices. So hopefully that's the skills that you accrue along the way.
Great. Why don't we take it out to the audience now?
for any questions. Go ahead.
First night I really loved all of the films. They're really good. Study on the big film. Had to close my eyes throughout most of it, but got it really good. And my question is, do you guys have any advice for dealing with that moment when your short film or your web series is blowing up and you're getting really emails? Because you can easily kind of get screwed on all of it. Do you have any advice as to how you
Let me repeat that question so everyone can get back in here. So, any advice for dealing with the moment when, you know, your short or web video blows up and you start getting millions of emails? How to handle that?
It's for me at least, I'm pretty relaxed in general in life, and it's a lot has to do with personality. People just freaks out about nothing. And when all that was happening, all my friends were like, "Are you freaking out?" And I was like, "Chill, man. No, like not yet. I will at some point." And I think at the end of the day, what matters is to keep your eyes surprised. Like, why are you doing all this? You know, sometimes when you get confused or excited or like you take a bad decision, it's because you lose, you know, the goal. Yeah, you need to have a clear idea of, okay, what am I doing all this? Like, what am I looking for? Am I looking to make a lot of money? Do I want to make a lot of money? Or do I want to keep making films until I'm old, like Kurosawa? Or do I want to, I don't know, I just want to make a film and take the money and run. I mean, there's so many motivations that you can have when you're making films of whatever you're doing. And it's very easy to lose track of why you do the things you do. That things, I guess, goes for life in general, but in film it's very important too. In the filmmaker, why am I doing all this? Like, why? That's the question. I have to ask that question to myself every morning. Particularly now when I have to choose if I want to go and do Fast and Furious 7 or if I want to go and make, you know what, I'm going to make an even smaller film. So it's really important. You have to really be clear-minded about it, and you have to ask yourself every morning why you do the things you do. Because then when you have a clear idea of what you want to do, it doesn't matter because they're going to send you 1,000 emails, but there's just one that matters probably. There's just two that are really talking to you, the rest are just want to tell you about stuff you're not interested in. But if you don't know, it's when you get confused. So I guess you ask yourself every morning why you do what you do. And if you know, it's not easy to know, sometimes you don't, but if you ask yourself that question, you'll probably be closer to know why you're doing it, and then it's easier to make any decision.
I agree. I think, and I also think that, you know, in a weird way, you have to put on blinders. Like, you just got to do what you believe and actually not listen to any of the hype. And certainly don't believe it because it goes away just as fast as it arrives. And, you know, you can be a great filmmaker, you can make a great film, and the next one's not as good. And people aren't interested, and then you make another one, everyone is. And it really does work like that. And getting to sort of my experience in a film and how it all kind of works. I've seen that firsthand. One day, your phone is ringing off the hook, and then one thing changes, and they won't take your call. It's amazing. But if you let that affect you, it will. So you just stay focused and do what you think is right and make the films you want to make.
Go ahead. I think one important thing to keep in mind with a lot of this stuff is, you know, there probably was like a lot more of that whole kind of version of like, I'll watch that Metallica kid, like move out, right? And now it's different because like frankly like if you fucked up or if you know lost your contacts with certain people, like there's nothing that's gonna stop you from just making more stuff. You know, if you're coming from like our kind of background and you're, you know, feeling empowered by, you know, the tools and stuff and you're gonna be making these things, like, you know, I could be, you know, literally rode out of this town on a rail, I'd probably still go make movies out of it. So you don't have to panic so much that every decision has to be the right decision all the time. You know, if you're getting your stuff out there, if you're being aware of, you know, the fact that this isn't just this kind of, you know, flash in the pan type thing, that you are building this long game. So when you do have that viral hit or whatever it is, you've been building stuff up. You know, you have other ideas, you have things to talk about people. You know, I know a lot of people who, including myself, like when we came out of film school and we had short films that won awards and festivals and stuff, we weren't really prepared for what we needed to do in these Hollywood situations. We were coming from film school in a bubble and, didn't think about how to pitch a project, how to pitch a marketable project. And so, it's all about sort of that grander, experience and package that you're building. And this is just like one little step of the process.
I would say too, the biggest lesson I've learned about life, but also this is maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic. Something important to know is that when meeting Hollywood and in making the decisions that you are faced with when you have some success, everyone that you encounter, I was basically really recognizing the glass ceiling that everyone is just like you and just like your friends. The conversations I've had with all my same thing with the producers and the agency people and all that stuff. It's all the same conversation, and because they're not, Hollywood isn't a machine. It's not, I hate regarding it even as Hollywood because that's what puts it on that pedestal. But it's filled with the studio execs that we always use as a negative moniker are really, people trying to make good movies and whatever. So we all bleed blood, you know what I mean? Like we're all the same, functioning the same way. And there are dicks, there are people that you wouldn't want to hang out with at a party, that you wouldn't want to do business with, and you have to navigate that. But there are awesome people that you want to be in business with and want to hang out with at parties or hang out with on the couch. So it's all about navigating that and realizing that it's not like, oh, now I'm a part of this machine. It's the machine is piloted by people. I want to ask Spencer a question because I think it goes along with this a little bit. But the three of us are very much of this generation of movies on the internet, short films that have broken out on the internet. I saw Sarah Jane on the internet, but a question that I'm always asked that I never have an answer for, or never feel like I have a good answer for, is should I send my short film to a film festival? And if I'm not mistaken, Sarah Jane played at festivals, right? And it seems like a lot of your stuff does go that route. So I'd be curious in hearing us talk about this. What do you feel like the differences are of the experience? But also, do you still see that as a viable? Because growing up, that was the thing. It was I had all those books, those guidebooks to what festival to send your thing to, and send it out a box or whatever it would submit. So yeah.
I mean, I still don't have a YouTube account. Like I don't quite know how to use it, but I like it and I watch them all the time. And I heard of Sundance and I thought that was cool. And my friend Nat Edgerton, he was really into film festivals. And so a lot of his short films played at film festivals. And one year he invited me to Sundance where he had one of his shorts. I think he's had like 9 shorts in Sundance. Like, it's ridiculous. And I went with him and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, tons of people all go to Park City to watch movies. People that they just love movies. And just to get to experience seeing a film that you know nothing about is the coolest thing. And, it's like when you sit around a campfire and it's like, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. And then what happens? And then what? And that's that experience you get when you go to a film festival. You don't really get that when you go to the movies. You see the trailers, you see the posters, the marketing, so many ways. And so just having such a great time going there, I just thought, how cool. I also felt like I didn't want to go back to Sundance without a film. Because it just felt like, I don't know, I just thought that's the way to really go.
Now, but if someone were to ask you, career-wise, should I send my movie out to festivals or should I put it online? What would you
say? I only know the festival route. And the thing that I know that works so well there is, for example, Sundance, so many people go. I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit allergic to the studio meetings and the general meetings, and so people all done a thing with But after Sarah Jane played at Sundance, because I wasn't on the radar before that. Then after that, I met with everybody, like a billion people. Like I couldn't keep up with it. I was like, if I take one more meeting, I'm like, how do I make film? So eventually I said, I'm not going to do any more meetings. I'm just going to focus on making stuff, which is how I think I got Hesher made. It's like, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm just going to do it. And I don't know. And I think it's a different part of making music videos and commercials. You kind of listen to people and then you walk away not feeling creatively fulfilled if the idea changes, or you just go, I'm going to do what I want to do, and if I have to do it all by myself, I don't care. And I think if you're true to yourself as an artist, or not an artist, whatever, as a human, and you make something that you like for you, other people will like it too. The second you try and do what they want, you fail, or at least I have. So I just don't do it anymore. So.
Advice. Any other questions? You guys hear that in the back? Okay.
Well, let's start with the online part of it, because I think that's an important thing to note here, which is that I think like the shorts that do best online are very aware of the attention span of someone who's watching. Because, we all love to imagine ourselves like having our film at a film festival and big packed audience is going to sit there and focus on it. But the reality is, if you put this stuff online, someone's going to be watching on their lunch break while they're talking to their friends and doing other stuff. So there are certain types of movies and certain types of stories that don't necessarily work as well online because they require someone to get invested in that storyline. Whereas, like, something's quick, got lots of sizzle and very clear and to the point. Someone can see it, watch it, pass it to their friend, and it's a lot easier to do than if you've got something that's long and requires a lot of investment. I feel like the features are still the opposite, though. And, it's not, that kind of stuff isn't sustainable for a feature. The problem I've found is that lately, movies are way too long, and they're over 2 hours, and they shouldn't be. And that's just about, proper pacing and structure, and it's not like anybody's making like Lawrence of Arabia, where it's like it should be 5 hours, It's like, why was Oz 2.5 hours? That should have been like whoa.
Oh,
sorry, Sam. Sorry. Text Sam.
Do not hire this. But yeah, so. I think, it's definitely be aware of, if you're putting stuff online, what that means, but don't stop the way that, you're facing somebody who's telling you, that they're seeing some, short attention span. I don't know. Maybe you're making stuff for TV or for a new generation of kids who don't make kids.
Yeah, and I think, just do what you think is right as a storyteller. I mean, it's funny, because when I was cutting Hesher, I got a note from one of the investors. He said, he thought that the beginning of the movie should move quicker. I said, okay, why? He said, well, when we go to sell the movie overseas, they're probably going to watch about a half an hour. So it would be good if you could get as much in that half an hour as possible. I said, what? I'm not making the movie for people who are going to watch a half an hour. Fuck you. No, go away. Well, I'm open to any no, but anyway, and that's not why you make a movie. If you're not going to watch the whole thing, then it's not. So do what feels right.
But I guess it kind of goes back to the previous question of, what should I do? Put it on YouTube, going to festivals, and you could do a panel of 2 hours just discussing the festival versus put it online, right? That it could be a whole day. But like you're saying, it depends on what you want to do, also why you're doing it and what it is. And I think it's true. People doesn't really. I think it's a good point that people doesn't really sit down and watch shorts and be like, I gotta watch a short on YouTube. They kind of watch stuff and they pass it along. They do watch movies on Netflix and they sit down. A lot of people watch actually movies on their laptops, which is, but I don't know why, because you sit down to watch 2 hours but not 10 minutes. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. It's just because we're used to the idea of push play YouTube and it's just supposed to be fast. So at the end of the day, it depends on what you do. And if you're going to do something, while you do it, just do it. Don't think about where it's going to go, what it's going to be the platform. If you're thinking too much about that, you think as a businessman, and you're already weird. You should think about what's the short and what's the story I'm telling, right? You know what I mean? It's just like, why, how I can tell it, what, everything that is film related. Doesn't matter if nobody's going to watch it, but it doesn't matter. You have to focus on film. Once it's done, you see it. It's something that you think may work for YouTube and people are going to watch it, great. YouTube is, if you think you want to really take advantage of it and meet people through it and just maybe, go to a festival because people are there after having drinks and meet you right away. It depends what it is, right? If you just want people to watch it, you just want to have the biggest audience ever. YouTube is the biggest audience ever. And the festival is a very small group of people. And it's, very passionate, very, I love it. But it's a different thing. It's just
totally. I wanted to add one other thing.
That's why you could spend a whole day talking
about it. No, but it's true. But so I don't know how many people go to a film festival, but even a huge film festival, it's not that many. There's two things. One thing that I think is important as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, is I always feel like I'm making a movie for me, like to something that I want to see. But it is also for an audience. It has to be. So part of making a movie is watching it with an audience and feeling it. Are your instincts, do they work? Do they? And so I feel like I got a lot out of watching all of my films with an audience. Like I always get so much out of it. And I think it's so valuable. With that said, I made another short recently that my friend Ben Gillovich produced here. He also produced The Captain. We made it at the end of last year, and it was for online. And I think it got like 4 million views or something. I was thinking about it's a 15-minute short film. There is no film festival, or all of the film festivals, you would never get that audience. Not even close. So it's fun. I mean, it's amazing. Like, why wouldn't you put your film online?
Tell you more. This was just one festival I took Panic Attack to before I uploaded it in Argentina. On one side is, on the other side of the river where I live in Montevideo. So I went there, I would show it in the afternoon, and it was, a short film section of the Fantastic Film Festival, like at 6 p.m. on a Thursday. So we walk in a theater like this, and there's even, I don't know how many people, less than here. And I'm like, yay, there's nobody here to watch my short. Great. I played those 4 shorts that day, premiering. Panic Attack first, I think I remember. And then Mama, the one that turned into a movie. That was the #1 movie in America like a few months ago. Mama, the Guillermo del Toro produced. Yeah. So it's so bizarre.
I was thinking like a John Travolta, like babies, a different aircraft.
No, Mama, whatever. It's
that makes more sense.
But okay, yeah, practice that. But you know what I mean? Like if our strategy, Andy Muschietti, the director of Mama, and mine would have been trying to get to Hollywood and make our movie through our shorts by taking it to a festival. In particular, in that case, it would have been a disaster. I mean, both of our shorts, they find their way online. So I guess at the end of the day, it depends what it is. Some things, because they have quicker pace and they're perfect for YouTube. I think Panic Attack was perfect, was tailor-made for YouTube. You don't have to really, you can be kind of super hyperactive kid and you're probably going to sit through the whole thing. It's just 5 minutes. You don't have to really, the plus and important, you don't really have to know any language. It's just like universal, nobody's talking. So there's a lot of things that makes some things perfect for YouTube.
What made, like, you just put yours up? How did people find it?
Well, with Panic Attack, what happened, there's a site called Motionographer, and anybody that is in animation knows about it. It's a blog, it's very influential in everything that is motion graphics and VFX, and I was a big follower. It's just like, I sent it to them, and they said like, oh, send it to us and we'll post it. And I was like, awesome. So, and they put it quickly on the site, just like a daily. It just disappear right away. But through that,
yeah, one person goes check this out.
Yeah, it's spread from there, I'm pretty sure. Because that's LA based. That's how the only way I can imagine how it gets.
It's interesting, like with the other shorts that the one I recently made, like I got an email from Danny Boyle who saw it on Vimeo. I was like, what? Like, is he really just scanning Vimeo for short films? I thought it was so, it was so cool and I was so honored. He didn't know that I had made any other films or anything, but he just saw it and really liked it. It was so cool.
There's the same here, and in Hollywood, that if you take a good script, you throw it in a one-on-one, like somebody's going to find it, which is true because most of the scripts that are just around are just like mediocre or bad. And so if there's something that's really truly awesome, you throw it somewhere and it's going to find its way. That's why they say it's true enough, but kind of I know where they're coming from when they say that. And I guess with shorts and stuff on YouTube, it's kind of the same way. If something is unique for some reason, whatever it is, I think it will always find its way. It's very weird, something that's special and amazing and unique and crazy good will just be left out there and nobody will see it. It will be very hard if you take something great. I gotta try to hide it, put it on YouTube, and I gotta make sure nobody finds it. You're gonna lose. People will find it, and it's gonna. There's so many platforms, and people will just like repost and Twitter and Facebook. So
let me grab another question here, right there.
Pitch a video game? Yeah, pitch the video game. Go ahead. You just spoiled it. Now we're all going to take that idea.
Any way you can communicate an idea is a good way to do it. Like, it doesn't matter. Film is an amazing way to communicate an idea.
I mean, there's an idea, something we're working on right now is taking an idea and trying to get it written up in a magazine, like a Vanity Fair in New Yorker, so that then it can be seen by the town.
Yeah, I think Oblivion, I think they made the comic, I could be wrong about this, but I think they made the comic so for it to be sort of a proof of concept or IP that they can then make a movie.
They do that a lot. They
right.
Graphic novels. There's a label that they will do your graphic novel for $5,000, something like that. And then you can use that to sell the idea to the studio. So they will do the first 15 minutes of the movie in a graphic novel. So they
Take a couple more questions here.
Absolutely not. No way. You just need a good story. No matter what. You don't even have to, your film doesn't have to be technically anything. It just should be a good story. And yes, the visuals are always nice, but if you don't have, no one cares about visuals. But, they're cool for 2 seconds, and then usually, if there's nothing else behind it, you get bored so quick. Right here.
So I'm a huge fan of marketing, and the marketing things is the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced. It's probably been a brilliant marketing thing that I've
I hate it.
I thought it was brilliant. That's
I hate it because you don't want somebody saying that behind you. Like, I'm gonna tell you a joke now, and this guy here is gonna go like, "Oh, it's awesome. You have to hear it." Like, I go like,
It's
"Wait,
the funniest
so let
thing
me,
you will
I gotta
ever
tell you a joke now." And he goes like, "Wait, it's gonna be awesome." I gotta shut up, dude. So the joke, and he's gonna jump again. He goes like, "It's the best fucking joke ever." I go like, "Dude, it doesn't matter what I say. It's never gonna be the best fucking joke ever." And that's the problem sometimes with marketing. That's why I say I hate it. I didn't hate it. I think we did a great job making a lot of money. The first week that means the marketing was great, and it was a little bit. You don't want a poster behind you saying like, "Come on, it's the scariest movie ever," because you get like now it's just set it up for failure.
You said it was the third scariest movie.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. I would have said that.
But still, it was brilliant in the fact that it got people to go see it. That's what really is.
Well,
Now, obviously, marketing footprint is a completely different game. How far do you think that it's overkill to market a footprint to put together an EP post, make a post work? Or do you think that the ones that obviously, if you just if your heart's in it, and it's really just going to find how much work you actually want to put into marketing?
I'm fairly off put by any, like, I feel like short films already, I'm even, I've always been a little off put by like credit sequences, opening credit sequences to short films, because it's like, first of all, none of us know who these people are, generally, so yeah, I think it should stand on its, it should just stand on its own, and if it doesn't stand on its own yet, then keep going until you made it that stand on its own.
because sometimes I think it's off-putting because sometimes you're not used to a short to have a poster. So suddenly you see a poster and you go like, "Oh, great!" And then it goes, "It's a short," and you go like, "Oh, it's a short." It's kind of it feels like you've been tricked.
The greatest short you will ever
Exactly. I think it's a little bit about what's the standards of the format, and shorts usually they don't have much of that. I mean, every short I did in the past, I always built the VHX box. I did the whole thing. It was just out of fun. Nobody ever saw those. But it's always a lot of fun doing it. But it's not, I don't think it's 100% necessary for shorts.
You really want to spend time on that production company logo that doesn't actually license, but I think especially with online stuff, there's definitely it is about that sort of like secret, right? That like, hey, there's some kid out there somewhere who made this short. You watch the short, you don't realize that the guy went to film school or he's got experience in the industry or whatever, and that's part of the sort of as an audience member, you want to believe that there's some kid who made this awesome. It's actually, I feel like it's always this challenge because, I'm sure all of us have met with some of these bigger companies who want to get into online content, and it's that real challenge of like, how does, NBC or, Doritos, come and tell you like, hey, we got this awesome short, and you're going to be like, no, you're trying to sell me something, and that's sort of, the icky factor that you got to be careful about when you make things just too tailored. You send out, MailChimp emails, explaining, your EPK. It's more of, hey, check it out. Send a link. Put a really funny headline in the email that you send to Gizmodo or whatever.
Yeah, it's simple. Today it's kind of fun to read by itself. I mean, for me, an example, and it's just a personal thing, but if I get a script and if I get a script to read, and the title page instead of the name has kind of a logo of the movie, I don't even read it. I go like, fuck this. It's already off-putting. It's just like, why you want the the curved new type with a simple name of the script? If I feel that somebody put something in the title page, the script is trying to sell it by putting a logo of the name of the movie or something, usually it feels like it's just natural, it feels cheesy, it feels like it's wrong, and it takes out to the project. The project is amazing, but it's already up to that start. So usually you try to keep it as simple as you can.
What if it's like a pop-up
Like with the title.
Part of the beauty
That
of
would be actually interesting. That would be actually interesting. I would go like, well, this guy's
pop-up looks great. Part of the beauty of the internet is that, with these guys especially, there are no rules. I think you guys have put your stuff up with no expectations, and stuff happen. You know, same thing. So there's no rule, I think, saying, oh, you can't go from film to video game, or you can't market film. It's just take advantage of the fact that there's completely new medium that's always changing. You know. Let's take one more question.
From the web.
For the,
It's from the live stream.
all right, we'll do two. One back here first. Right here.
I definitely do. I previewed everything we do. And I think part of it is because my background is editing. I understand the world of film through editing. And I also know that that's where you make a movie. It's more important than anything. So I always kind of start there. And the great thing about pre-visiting for a low-budget film, or I mean for anything, but certainly if you have budget constraints and time constraints and constraints of any kind, which is every film, no matter how big it is, you can get very specific, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. And you know, it's funny because people storyboard. It's like storyboard is a great sort of sketch, but it's not really relevant. You know, but if you put a camera here and you go, you know, you actually fit a camera here and you cut it together with a couple of other shots. It's actually very real. It's like it's such a great way to figure out what you're going to do. It's amazing that everyone doesn't do it. I feel like the only way, especially now, the technology is so easy.
Yeah, and for Monster Roll, we actually made it 4 times. And you know, it started out as a storyboard presentation type thing, but before we shot, I gathered a bunch of friends over to my house and just shot a bunch of footage. You know, made like a whole shot list of like, here's a bunch of stuff I want to get. You know, we spent half a day directing here and just shot a million different things, and I cut that together, and that, you know, gave me some sort of template for when we went into the actual VFX. And after we did that, then went into like a very detailed previs because we knew we had a very limited amount of time. This was a very complicated VFX, you know, short, and you don't want to be left, you know, at the end of the day, like shooting a ton of stuff and then not, you know, being able to do the effects on it. So, you know, at that point it got very methodical, but you know, it was nice because, you know, being on a set, being, you know, under those kinds of constraints, there's already so much pressure, especially if it's like your short and your money and all this other stuff, that you're, you know, creatively exhausted by the time you get on the set a lot of times. And knowing that there is this kind of backup that's already been in place, the rest of the crew knows what's going on, the DP knows what's going on. You know, if you suddenly, you know, got stomach poisoning, like somebody could probably look at the shot list and figure out how to do stuff.
That being said, I don't, because I believe that when I do storyboard, I don't do previs because I personally, this is, and you know, guys, everybody has this method, right?
That's
Whatever
really
works
hard,
for you. It's not the ultimate truth. But I think everybody has the method and whatever works for you is, you know, what you should do. For me, at least, I like to storyboard the scene, and then I like to get rid of them if I can. It's just the way I work. And one of the scenes that I'm most proud of it, and even that, it's this one with Natalie, with the blonde girl who got her arm off. She goes to help to find water. I did that was the first storyboard I did. It was quite tricky to have like a lot of setups. And on the day I got there, I was already started building that. I was like, well, now decided I would go to just one shot. I was getting very long and not building a lot of suspense. Follow her into the kitchen, trapped her with all that, and without the other way, I'm happy that I did that. I did respect my own story. It's always better to have them than not to use them. But not to have them and be lost.
And I agree. I think it's like doing storyboard, doing previs. What you're doing is your homework. You're right though. You should throw it away. Like I think previs is really important when you're doing stunts. You know, because you can get very specific. The guy gets hit by a car. Often you see, like, I've seen people shoot stunts, and I'm like, why do they need to hit him like that? Like, what are you actually using? Is it a one shot, or is it just a shot from the inside of the windscreen? It's the windscreen. And if you know that, there's a different way to shoot that, probably more effective way, that looks better and is safer. So, but I agree, like I threw away most of them. But the good thing is I always had, even though, you're always chasing your tail in terms of time, it's just never enough, everything. But if you've done your homework, it's in your head, and you don't have to think about it. You just go, oh, actually, what did you do? That's it.
I think we're going to take one more question here, guys.
Sure, guys. This one's from the live stream. The question is, Netflix, Yahoo, Hulu, etc. original content. However, they're still sticking to the idea of a season. Do you feel we'll be seeing a less conventional structure in the future?
Okay, so Yahoo, Amazon, Netflix are all producing their own content right now, but they're still sticking to a kind of typical season structure. What was that?
Do you feel we'll be seeing a less conventional structure in the future?
Do you think we're going to be seeing a less conventional structure in the future?
I feel like you can speak too with the Dan. I feel like things more stories are being told episodic. I feel like it's going the other way. That less movies are being made, or not less movies are being made, but more people are interested in making episodic stories than movies. And not only that, but first of all, I would love to see shorter seasons of things that I think maybe Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff are more inclined to do. I love like the British model of 6-episode seasons, all killer, no filler, as opposed to 22 episodes. I love some Parenthood or Friday Night Lights, whatever, but when there's 22 more episodes to watch, I'd rather just see, But other than that, I kind of dig seasons, man. I always loved, like, season 2, who's got the new haircut, how's everyone going to look different? And I feel like you've aged with, that's what makes TV kind of fun, is that you feel like you're really evolving with the characters and everything has so much more meaning because you remember back in season 1 when she, like, just barely survived the car crash and now she's like a badass, So, I dig that stuff, but.
Yeah, I think from what I remember, they seem to be very open in terms of where stuff is going right now, and I think that the formats are going to change. I think seasons definitely do work, and I think that our habits are certainly either you like tuning in weekly, and whether that's weekly online or weekly on the TV, but there's also this sort of idea that you can get people to watch all of them at once online now, which is a sort of new format where you suddenly have people who are willing to sit down and spend 18 hours watching House of Cards. So there's been a lot more kind of ideas of like, can we build these blocks? Of like we're going to release 6 episodes now, 6 episodes later, or we're going to do these serial.